So what is Hermetic Alchemy and why is it so effective? This is a question that came in from a friend of mine. We were out for coffee and he was like, hey, can you film a What is Hermetic Alchemy for Dummies video? So here it is. All right. So when you look at spiritual systems of development, it can be approached from many different standpoints. Now, very often in the beginning, the types of training that are offered are designed to be as palatable to as diverse a range of people as possible. It needs to be as open as possible so that people of any capacity can enter the stream of development, so to speak. Okay, so this is why so often the objects of meditation, etc., are very, very physical. And you start doing things that work on cultivating the physical body, cultivating alignment. Your exercises that you do typically are also very physical. So this might be things such as typical flexibility training, strength training, vitality training, because you need the vitality for the evolution of the path, especially as things get more intense. It can be quite tricky. And the physical practices might include things like prostrations and practices of offering from more of a religious type standpoint. But typically in the beginning, most of the activities, most of the exercises, the trainings have a lot to do with the physicality. Why? Because the body is obvious, right? We can feel it, so we can work with it. It's very difficult to work with something that you are unable to perceive, right? And so this is why Hermetic Alchemy has such a unique and effective presence when it comes to the spiritual arts. And that is because you develop your perception through cultivating energetic awareness as it exists within the body, through vitality, energetic awareness as it exists through the astral body, through the emotional substrate, energetic awareness as it exists through the mind, through the mental functioning and capacity. Just even starting with just those three layers, that allows us to get to work. And so in many traditions, there is a demonizing of the formful aspect of the mind, the emotions, the body. Everything is about dissolution. And this is wonderful, but it can also be quite limiting because you are never really unwinding the formative processes of the mind, the formative processes of emotion, and the formative processes of the body. And by unwinding, I mean you are never really doing a deep dive into those, because as soon as the formative process is noticed, if you are demonizing that, then it will be essentially stamped on, put under lock and key, and until it can start dissolving. Now, why is that an issue? Well, as we just said, you don't get to know the formative process. If we can get to know the formative processes, this gives us an incredible edge when it comes to the deformation processes or the dissolutionary processes, whatever the word is there. Everything is either becoming, in a phase of becoming, or in a phase of unbecoming. And if we only focus with the conscious mind on one of these, it can be very, very difficult to really perceive when the becoming aspects of, say, the mind, mental function, are at play at very subtle levels. But if we practice and evolve our capacity not just to perceive, but to engage with the subtle becoming processes of mind, emotion, and body, this gives us tremendous freedom and awareness when it comes to the dissolution capacities and their subtleties as they express mind, emotion, and body. So, this is one of the reasons that Hermetic Alchemy can be so effective, okay, is we are not demonizing and whatever you're doing, it doesn't really matter what this system is. If you're on this path, if you find yourself demonizing different aspects of reality and life, that's going to be a blind spot that will grow over time. And the mind, we won't want to look at that. The illuminated aspect of the mind will skirt around it because it starts to skirt around it in the beginning. Now, if we are able to offer an open-minded approach that does not demonize any aspect of reality, then we can look at it, right? We typically don't want to look with curiosity, kindness, and an open heart at that which we demonize. Okay, you can expand off of that in whatever tendrils of the day and age you happen to be listening to this. But that is a very common thing. So the openness of mind, the openness of heart, the curiosity, the freedom of the identity or liberation of that to not get stuck on all these little things and to be simply aware and explore. So because we're developing awareness of the energy and not simply deifying the forms at these levels, this also is one of the reasons that Hermetic alchemy has quite an effective and fast track record, we might say. Okay, so let's say we are doing a spiritual system, engaged in one that is focusing in the beginning a lot on the body and the formations of the body, say various rituals, practices in cleanliness and health and all these things. These are wonderful because we want to build these habits so that we can do them easily once there is, it's less about building the habit than it is about dissolving the resistance to those processes, right? So that you can, over time, do what is necessary, not do what is habitual. That requires a deep release function so that we aren't encountering resistance all the time and then allowing resistance to navigate our actions all the time. So there's certainly value in it. But the form of that expression, of the specifics of those exercises, those practices, that is what is being essentially in that stage deified by the mind. So we are stuck on the shape of those practices, not on the energy inside them. The same can be said for the types of mentalities and people who engage with, or systems that engage with the emotions and the form of those emotions as the be-all, end-all of what they're working on. So if you are feeling your emotions, observing the emotions, and then practicing sticking to them, this is going to hold you back in the long run quite a lot. Why? Because you are sticking to the form. So we go, oh, that feeling, that's my, love. So, I am special. I'm focusing on my love. Isn't that shape wonderful? That is my anger. I am special. Isn't my anger wonderful? That is my grief. That is my joy. And it's the shapes that are being focused on. And then because of instructions that, while potentially have good intentions behind them, but perhaps not thought through fully, such as sit with your emotions, those emotions become deified and attached to. And so the shape of the emotion becomes the thing that we connect with and the thing that we are working with. We are sitting at that point with cohesion, with constriction, with grasping. Now, the purpose of an instruction, say to sit with your emotions, is that you sit with that energy. This is just, in my opinion and experience so far, is that you sit with that energy in such a way that you realize that you are creating that shape and that that shape is something you are holding on to, and you are perpetuating the recreation of that shape again and again and again. As you come to that realization, there is a cracking of the mind, a cracking of the habit, a release that occurs, and suddenly all that energy that was inhibited from its creative potential it's suddenly freed, because that shape is no longer there, because we are no longer creating it or recreating it on a moment-by-moment basis. every time you have this, oh, it's this feeling of like you didn't realize that you were holding on to something, and suddenly you let it go. And it's quite relieving, or it's releasing through relinquishment. It's a liberating feeling. You are no longer imprisoned by that particular shape, and that energy is able to flow more freely. All of those inhibiting shapes, these are things that we get stuck on. And if those shapes don't dissolve, then apparently they're all circles. If those shapes don't dissolve, then what we end up doing is we end up spending a tremendous amount of energy and focus during our practice reinventing those shapes and strengthening them through the focus and through the energy of the practice. So those particular blemishes within awareness, those blind spots within awareness, those absences of free-flowing energy, they become one of the things that is strengthened. And so our practice is actually, at that point, strengthening our blind spots. And this can be, of course, as much an issue as anything else. If it is functions of the mind that we are attaching to the form of, this might be forms of view, of perception, of correct and incorrect, all these different things. There's millions of these that we are working with. So this would be instructions like observe the thoughts. People hear this and they observe the form of the thought. The form is just the very end thing, right? And there's a whole amalgamation of processes that occur reticulating between mental, astral, and physical that creates these forms of thought. Now, if we read an instruction like observe the thoughts, and we think of this as observe the form of the thoughts, once again, our attention, what our attention goes is on, the energy flows to. What the energy flows to is strengthened. That energy is, once it's flowed there, once the energy is there, it is encapsulated by the shape of the mind that's there, by that blockage, by that form. So the energy flows into that form. And it gets stronger and stronger, strengthening that form. And this leads to further blockages on the path. It inhibits the free flow of that energy. So, with Hermetic Alchemy, we begin the way that I like to teach it, because I found it so effective in my own path, is to work instead of with the forms of physical practices, with the forms of emotional deification, with the forms of mental thought. We begin by working with the energy itself. And so we work with the coarsest of the energies, which would be the life force, right? The vital energy. And this is so valuable because it allows one the opportunity to touch into, to gain awareness of a substance that permeates the physical, permeates the emotional, permeates and enlivens, permeates the mind, the mental form that might be created, and the thought movement of the thoughts themselves. And because we are working with an energetic substance, it is something that is prior to the form. By working with something prior to the form, this right out of the gate makes it easier to not attach so hard to the forms of the physical, emotional, and mental practices, right? Because you're working with the permeable or the substance that penetrates through. And this is a lot of value because then we can start surfing that wave of energy. As we surf that wave of energy, we are able to continue to find new degrees of freedom. This liberative aspect, this release potential, allows for more and more and more energy to be liberated because it is not being grasped. And this allows for transformation and shift to occur in ways that are quite deep, quite powerful, and beyond, at many times, beyond the comprehension of the conscious mind. Right? When things are beyond the comprehension of the conscious mind, the rationalizing and logical mind doesn't really have the opportunity to preserve those particular blockages, right? When it is up to the logical mind, up to the rational mind to work with the forms, then it can preserve its own delusions with quite incredible strength, right? So by working with the energetic substance, we're washing these forms, we're washing the energy through, and the forms start to wash away, or can. Of course, they can be infused again with energy and strengthened, but the potential is more easily available. And you'll start to notice as more energy flows that the pain points of the forms that have not let go, those become highlighted by the energy. And if we can observe these highlighted forms not as things to cling to, as shiny, hyper-energized objects of further identity and identification, then we are able to allow, through these mechanisms, a further release to occur. So this allows for us to then begin to refine the substrate of energy that we are paying attention to, that we are aware of, right? Once again, it's very difficult to work with something that we are unable to perceive. So once we can perceive the energetic nature and flow that is occurring or being stagnated in different areas of body, of emotion, of mind, then we can start to refine that. And as it refines, it unlocks more refined aspects of stagnation in body, emotion, and mind. And through awareness of these things, of course, we are able to then free those stagnations, which allows for more refined flow of more refined energy, energetic substrate at body, emotion, and mind. So this allows us a very clean and direct relationship to the process of ascension, to the process of spiritual evolution directly, because we are not being bogged down, one might say, in the physical, the formful representations of exercises and of evolution. Now, this can also have a downside in that we can sometimes lack integration because the path is so direct. And it's also very easy to become quite attached to the energetic powers and phenomena and, expressions of energetic awareness. This is a very easy thing to become attached to, and one of the things that, one of the ways in which this particular type of path can obscure the refinement of cut to the heart of it type of practice, right? Because people get stuck in the weeds of the expression of the skills that you come to realize through this development. So with Hermetic Alchemy, the potential is there to work with what you might call a very direct line to find nature of mind, to find universal mind through a consolidated path. Now, aspects of the path in their teaching, because even when you're working with energetic substrate, it's very easy, of course, as we've said, for different perspectives and forms to arise that limit those different energies to what they mean to the rational mind, right? Because we start to impose that meaning because it's comfortable, it's nice. It feels good to know a thing. It's much more tumultuous to be unstable and walking that line of precariousness all the time, or to be falling through that space of uncertainty all the time. That is not super comfortable. So we need to be aware of the tendency to grasp at certainty, to grasp at form, to grasp at the knowns. And if we are aware of that, then this can allow us, once again, to begin relinquishing those, because that grasping occurs at each further refined layer of the vibrational scale. You'll start to notice this grasping and this need to impose knowns. So, if you want a direct path, it's nice to have consolidated and fairly fluff-free explorations and exercises to work through. And the way I teach, at least, is we approach the exercises, we approach the formful side of the path from as evolved a view as we are capable of, from as expansive a view as we are capable of. And you could look at the evolution of view as almost a one-for-one for the qualitative development of an individual on the path. And that view is not an idea that is held, it is something that is realized in release and expressed through the connection to and goodwill one might have for ever expanding fractals of identity, we might say. One's awareness is able to encapsulate, one's consciousness is able to encapsulate greater and greater and greater and greater fractals of awareness, and I don't know if identity is the right word there, but it certainly can be that as well. So Hermetic alchemy offers so much in that you can have a very clear path. It can be devoid of the fluff of ritual. Very often the energetic qualities and that we might find through practice, these can be induced via ritual. But the ritual is just a tool to get you to a certain place. And the idea, if you have clear perception and awareness of all these different energetic potentials, then you can do a ritual. You can perceive the effects of the ritual. And then you can just go to the end result of that ritual and meditate on that, within that, of that, as that, and build a resonance with that, instead of the energy being consolidated in the shape of the ritual. Okay, so ritual has some amazing functions and purposes, but through the processes of cultivating awareness and perception, we are able to move beyond the form of the ritual, the form of the practice, and cut to the heart of things fairly quickly. In higher level meditation practices, very often there is something discussed which is, let's say in Hatha Yoga or Dzogchen, they might call it nature of mind. And so you get the transmission of nature of mind. And some people are able to pick up on it, and some people are not. And if you're not, it is said that you're not ready for that transmission. Through cultivating working from the no fluff approach and the awareness-based approach and the perceptual elevation approach, we are able to very quickly reach, from a relative standpoint, very quickly reach a point where we can perceive or begin to perceive these nature of mind type of transmissions. And this radically reduces the time it takes, to borrow from the Vajrayana, for one to progress from an aspirant of low capacity to an aspirant of middle capacity to an aspirant of high capacity. Okay? Instead of going through 30 years of very graduated, slow progress, you can speed that along quite a ways. Now, there are many things that we might miss out on through not going through a whole long process. So it is nice to, while you are working from an expedient standpoint, to touch into a lot of the exercises, the explorations that different rituals, etc., that one might go through during a more traditional path of development. Just to keep yourself honest and to make sure that one is not, patting, we're not patting ourselves on the back with our super fast, progression, right? This is, real stuff that's going on. It takes integration, and it takes a type of curiosity and fearlessness and courage to really fall off the cliff, to fall through the unknowns on a moment-by-moment basis. It's not easy. So anyway, that is a little introduction to Hermetic alchemy and what is Hermetic alchemy for dummies for this, as this one friend and student requested. Hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you on the next one. If you are interested in training, there is a retreat coming up June 2026 in Powell River, British Columbia. This will be looking at initiation into Hermetics, the aspects of deity yoga and invocation, as well as further integrative practices. There are 7-day, 16-day, and 30-day options for this training. So for those of you who want to go deep, there's an opportunity to really, really excel during this training. Okay, thanks for your time. See you on the next one. Bye.